All right, moving on to the features area. The first two steps in everything. Features, a section, and a container, right? That's our pattern using Bootstrap. Because that container is going to give us our max width setting and our breakpoints. And this is going to be 100%. So if we want to change the background or something like that, and just plain mark it with an ID. So in my features, you see that number 3 or number 2 is we're going to use the Bootstrap pattern, and it needs to be 3 columns above 992 and 1 column below 992. So the first thing we need to do is set up our row context. Div class equals row, right? And I don't have to write anything about that row because that row was written by the fine people at Twitter who wrote Bootstrap, and it will set up our flexbox context. So what I need is 3 columns, and they're all going to basically be the same. So I'm going to give this a class equals. Now it needs to be, right, so it's a 12-unit grid. So remember, when we're coding, it's different than Webflow. We're working from smallest to largest, whereas in Webflow it has you working from largest to smallest. So we're going to say class equals col-12. That means it's going to take up all 12 of those units at the smallest size. And then we need at 992, which is the large breakpoint, for it to be 3 columns. So that's call large 4, right? 4 plus 4 plus 4 equals 12. That gives us our 3 columns that take up all the space that we need. And so I'll go ahead and close that. What else are we going to need inside that? We need an image with a icon, a header, and some text. I'm not even going to really look at the instructions. I know it goes here. So I'm going to say image source equals, and I have an icon over here. I just called it images icon.svg. Should always put it in alt tag, right? So I'm going to call this horsey icon, right? Just for measure here. And then I'm going to put in a header. So I'll put in H2 because we already have an H1 up here. It doesn't make sense to have another H1 down here. And I'll say some feature. And of course there's some text here, and I need some, I'm just going to randomly type a bunch of stuff here. I want enough so that it wraps so you can see what happens with the images here. This is going to be really great. There we go. Okay, and I need 3 of those. So I'm going to go right here, 2, 3, and we'll check out what's happening. So we've got this, and uh-oh, I got an error. So let's see where the problem is. I don't have a closed section. That is that there, and there it is. Okay, so I've got my images, and they're a little too big for use. So I'm going to go into my main, and I'm going to get those, right? So I'm just going to go ahead right down here and start writing. And I'll say this is the features section. And they're the only images in the feature section, so I can get away with that. And say width, I don't know, 100 pixels, height, 100 pixels. Kind of mosey back, make sure I like that. That is fine. And again, you have to do some styling on your own. I want you to style the header and that a little bit. Give me something to show you know all these fancy CSS things. What else is going on here? Make sure there is air in your comments. I'm surprised. Did I not make you use Google Fonts? That seems so unlike me. Oh well. So you are going to need to center it when it's big. And when it's small, it should be on the left of the text. So how do we get that accomplished? Well, the centering everything when it's big is real simple. I'm just going to go to, I'm going to say features.col12, since I can be lazy and just grab that div that way. And I'm going to say text align center. But that's a problem. It's centered there. It's not going to, we don't want it centered here. So that actually needs to be inside of a media query, right? And so we want to center it at 992 pixels, right? So at media, this time we'll use min width because we want it 992 and above. And I'll paste this into there. There we go. So now it's centered there, but when I get to this version, oh, it's over there. Great. So the last thing I need to do is put this this bad boy over here. Actually, I need some space, I think I say in one of the things. So if I wanted to do that, I'd say dot features dot row padding. I never want to put left and right on anything when I'm using this Bootstrap row and container. So I want, say, 40 pixels top and bottom, but I want 0 on the left and right. And go back and check out it's still working. Now, I could have reset it 0 in Bootstrap. That could be problematic. So more than likely, I don't want to screw with Bootstrap's left and right. So I'm going to say padding top 40 pixels, padding bottom 40 pixels. There we go. So we're looking good here. Now I need to get those images to the left. And there's actually 3 ways to do it, and I'll go through all 3. So the first way I would do it is simply go back to my features images here and say float left. So now you see these are floated left, and it has that. Now obviously I only want it to be below. I only want it to float left when it's below. So I want it when it's down here. And so what I want to do is clear that float over here in the 992 one. So I'm going to go to features img, and I'm going to say float none, right? And so now it's not floating on the larger one, but it is floating on the smaller one. Now, another thing I want is some space there. So I'm going to want to say give it a margin right of 20 pixels, and then I want to get rid of that margin right on the when it's centered because it could screw it up, right? So now it's all about right. We want to be cognizant of design, and so there we go. We have some air there, and see the way the text floats around. I don't love the way that text floats around, so let's fix that. I'm actually going to go to my markup, and I'm going to instead give this a div around the text. So I'm going to put the div around the text, and I'm only going to do it on the center one. So only pay attention to the center one, so you can see everything that's happening. So because again, I'm showing you 3 different ways. So now when I put a div around that center one, let's take a look at what happens here. Still floating around. So what we actually need to do is grab this div. So I'm going to call this, I'm going to give this some kind of a class equals, I don't know, fix. And I'm going to go to main CSS. I'm going to say dot fix, and I'm going to say a margin left of, how big was the image? 100 pixels? I'll say 100. Oh, and it's got 20 margin right. I'll say 120 pixels. That should work. And so now notice, right, this goes right here all the way to the side. Now there is a problem that when I make it larger, see now it's got that ugly thing there, so I would need to do the same thing as reset it, right? Dot fix, and I'd say margin left 0, and there you go, that's fixed. So now it works both ways. So let's go to the third one, and let's fix it the third way. And so the third way is to use a little bit of our old friend, the flex box. And so this one will also take having a div, right, around that. And this time I think I'll put the class on this right here. I'll add another class to this, and I'll call this flex example. And so what do I do here? I go back to my main CSS. I say dot flex example, and I'm going to give it a display of flex. Okay, so now you see already it looks weird there. So all I'm going to do is just reset this in the media query above. So I'm going to say, right, I'm just going to actually be lazy and cut and paste this into here. And I'm going to say, instead of flex, I'm going to say display of, I don't know, block, just kind of the normal one, right? So there it is. It's back to normal, but when it's smaller, it's actually a flex box here. And so it naturally just put them in rows next to each other, and I really don't need to do anything else. And so those are the 3 ways you could have solved that. And that is your, that is the feature area other than add in icons. I did that. So that's everything. That is everything.